and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Cleric's Twilight Domain class specialization from Tasha's Guide to Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. Where there is light, there eventually arrives darkness, but so too does light eventually return. However, the clerics of this domain deal primarily with the transition periods between light and dark, called twilight. A good analogy for this would be that the clerics of this domain are those who stand between the forces of dark and light, protecting those of the light from anything that might creep up on them from the dark. Once again, clerics of this ethos will follow very specific gods who are directly aligned with their own beliefs and morals, as we can see in the example table that is part of this class sheet. And as you should know by now, clerics are one of the few classes that choose their specialization as the character is being created, because their domain dictates what spells they start off with. And this video is going to focus entirely on the Twilight Domain. So if you're looking for an idea as to what the basics are behind creating a cleric, I highly recommend you watch the video where I create a life domain cleric, as linked in the description below. So give me a moment to go ahead and begin a level 1 cleric here, and I will show you at the point where I select the subdomain, and then I will once again set the video aside, finish that character off, and then show you once I've saved the character. So as stated, I am now ready to choose the Cleric class and thereby select the Twilight Domain specialization, as we can see here. And I'm just going to quickly go with Persuasion and History for this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish this character off and then bring you back once I've saved the character sheet. So the first feature your character is going to gain is called Domain Spells of Twilight, and it becomes available to your character at the time of creation. This feature grants you spells that you will learn automatically at the clerical levels defined. So Moonbeam and See Invisibility, for example, are acquired when your character's level reaches level 3. You gain 2 spells at level 1, but also gain 2 new spells every 2 levels up to level 9, so at levels 3, 5, 7, and 9. These spells do not count against your prepared spells list. In fact, they will always be available for you to use, and won't impact the number of spells you can prepare each day. The only restriction is that in order to cast a spell, you must have a free spell slot that you can use. To ensure that these spells remain separate from your other spells, you're going to want to ensure that when you drop them into place, you create an additional spell group. In this case, I'm going to drop this into place, and for Fairy Fire, I'm going to get rid of this level 1, and I'm going to create a new group called Twilight. And get rid of that. And that'll create a new group. I can then drop Sleep into place, and you can see that it will automatically add itself to the appropriate group. The other thing I'm going to do is switch this to spells, because that's what this group actually is. And in fact, I got to switch this one as well. And the reason we want to do that is because when these spell slots get used up, we want these spells to disappear. And right now, for some reason, they are not. Oh, that's because I was on standard. So if I go to combat and action, and then I go and use up the spells, they disappear from our list. And that is exactly what we want to have happen. Excellent. That sets everything up for this. Now, the last thing that I want to do is make sure that these are prepared. And that is to ensure that they are able to be cast at some point in the future, whereas these ones we don't need to prepare. So we shouldn't have to worry about that. The next feature your character will gain is a bonus proficiency feature, and it grants your character proficiency with martial weapons as well as heavy armor. And what this means is that we want to ensure that under our proficiencies listing here, we have both simple weapons as well as martial weapons. So I'm going to just simply select a line, hit enter to create an empty field, and type in martial weapons. I'm also going to ensure that heavy armor is in this list, which it appears not to be, so I'm going to do that as well. And now that legitimately allows our character to use either of these weapons, as well as this armor. If at this particular point in time, you wish to swap out your weapons, in this particular case, I had chosen a Warhammer and a Light Hammer, as well as, I believe it was Scaled Armor, or Scale Mail Armor, yep, Scale Mail Armor. I could theoretically do so because I'm creating the character. It's not yet established. Some DMs won't let you do that, others will. I tend to when it comes to my characters and my players. Now, a more effective way to get at the new list of items is to go into classes, scroll down to Cleric, specifically the player's handbook copy of the book, and open that up. Down at the bottom of this are the tables that allow you to select new weapons as well as new armor, and then you just drag and drop and delete the old ones. In addition to the first two features, you also gain another feature called Eyes of the Night, and it grants your character the capability to see in the dark out to 300 feet, as if you have gained the dark vision trait. Although, admittedly, dark vision does not let you see out to 300 feet. Areas of dim light appear as though they're your typical normal daytime, while dark shadows and areas of total darkness only appear to be dimly lit to you, all within that 300-foot range. This trait is gained as a passive capability, but if you choose to use an action to do so, you can share this capability with a number of creatures equal to your character's wisdom modifier, as long as they are willing and within 10 feet of your character's position. It will last for 1 hour, but once used, you will either have to complete a long rest or burn through a spell slot to be able to use it again. Now, to set up this first part is relatively easy to deal with. You can go to your character's main tab here and update your senses to include dark vision of 300. Generally, you would see dark vision 60 or 30 here, depending on the race or abilities that were selected or traits that were selected. But in this particular case, you're getting the ability to see out to 300 feet in this particular character. So this is a valid value that you can put into place. And this is your passive ability. Adding this as an effect to other characters is going to be a problem. At least it would have been had Fantasy Grounds not recently released some updates to enable token lighting and token vision into the game. Now what we can do is this. We can drag this into our Actions tab here. I'm going to set this up for, standard and group. I'm going to move this over to the Twilight Domain. Oops, if I could spell Twilight today, I haven't been able to spell it once. And now what I'm going to do, where did that go? That went down here, didn't it? Yep. I'm going to add a new effect. And what this effect is going to allow me to do is drop a new ability into place. I'm going to call it Eyes of the Night, semicolon, and then I'm going to say Vision, colon, 300, Dark Vision. Again, it's the Vision effect. It's going to be a 300 range, and it's going to be Dark Vision, meaning that your character will be able to see out to 300 feet as if they were walking around with dark vision. And it will last for 1 hour. And it can go on anyone other than yourself. So you want to leave this as targets and it doesn't expire outside of the duration or unless you cast it again or use it again. So now all you have to do is inside of a combat scenario, when your characters are part of a combat tracker, you can click and drag that effect onto a given character. So I've gone ahead and set up our character, if you will, inside of the combat tracker. I'm just going to get rid of that old effect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to permit this cleric to grant this ape this particular effect. And you will see that it applied. Now I'm going to show something to you and show you that the effect does in fact work. So I have gone ahead and set up a map using one of the salt marsh maps, Cove Reef in this particular case. And here's our character and here's the ape. If I get rid of that dark vision component, if you will, from our character here in our main sheet, you'll see that the vision capability goes away. If I put it back in, it comes back in relation to the map. The same thing is happening when it comes to what the ape can see, but you as a player can't see what another token is doing and what effects that token is having. In fact, you can't even move that particular token. But if you move your token around now on the map, you should see, as soon as I click that, you should see that the shadows shift as your character moves. Now, this is a very large map, and you can see the distance is quite a ways out. Normally, if your character could only see 60 feet, so if we set this back, let me open up the character sheet again, and set this back to 60 feet, you'll see that your cone of vision, if you will, or your area of vision is seriously reduced. So this proves that this whole thing is working as expected. It's difficult to show that the effect is actually working, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to delete that from our character, but then I'm going to apply the effect onto our character through this effect. And once I do that, you can see that this is exactly what the ape is able to see. And you can see that the original distance is in fact working. Excellent. That means this whole thing is working the way that we want it to. Now, our character doesn't need the effect because it's a passive ability they're gaining. So I'm going to clear that out, set that up there. And that is how this particular feature is going to work. Now, the last thing that we have to go ahead and set up is this ability to have a limited number of uses if you share it out. So that means we essentially just need to set it up as a prepared item of, one daily use. And that sets this feature up. This subclass also gains a fourth feature at level 1, and it is called Vigilant Blessing. And what it does is it allows your character to grant themselves or another creature that they touch advantage on the next initiative roll that is going to be made. So the benefit is going to remain in place until the initiative roll is made, or until you choose to use this feature again and give it to somebody else. However, there is no other limitation as to how often you can use it. Setting this up is also relatively straightforward. All we have to do is drag and drop it into our Actions tab. I'm going to copy and paste this so that I don't have to try to spell Twilight again. I'm then going to add a new effect, and it will be called Vigilant Blessing. Semicolon, and we're gaining advantage on our initiative rolls, so we want to say ADVINIT. It doesn't expire. It can go on targets, but it's going to expire on the next roll. So let's go ahead and show this inside of a combat tracker situation. I'm going to drag and drop this effect onto my character, and then I'm going to roll initiative. You can see that it rolled 2 dice. And also you can see that there is the ADV tag here, and that there is a green die here indicating the 18. We dropped a 15. That means that this worked and the effect went away. Now, if I had already rolled initiative for the session and then just wanted to set that into place until I went through and rolled another initiative roll at some point in the future, then this would remain there indefinitely until I chose to cast it and add the effect, say, to the ape here. I would have to remove it from my own character. Once your character reaches level 2, they will gain access to the Channel Divinity Twilight Sanctuary feature. With this feature, your character can create a sphere of twilight that is equivalent to dim light and is centered on your character, and it will reach out to 30 feet from that point. So as long as your character moves, so will this sphere of twilight. It makes use of your character's holy symbol, and that symbol has to be presented in order for the feature to be used. And it will also remain in place for 1 minute, but it can go away earlier if your character is killed or otherwise incapacitated. However, while the effect is in place, your character can grant anyone who ends their turn inside of that sphere of light one of the following effects. The first is that your character can terminate an effect that is causing a creature to be charmed or frightened, removing that effect from the creature, including yourself. The other option is that you can grant 1d6 temporary hit points. Again, it will also include to yourself. There does not appear to be a limit as to how many you can affect at one time, as the only requirement is that a creature ends their turn within the sphere, and your character can simply assign one of the effects to each creature that qualifies. So let's go ahead and set up our Channel Divinity configuration. First off, we want to drag in the original Channel Divinity feature, set that up as Turn Undead, because that's its purpose, and I want to call this group Channel Divinity. I also then want to drag in this feature, and I'm going to copy and paste this and put it into there. And the reason why I'm doing this is specifically for the 1d6 temporary hit points here. We really don't do anything with the effect removal, except for the fact that the DM can go ahead and remove any effects that are in place on a given character. So, before I get to that though, I want to ensure that both of these features use a shared daily utilization limit. And I also want to ensure that Wisdom is set up as our skill base for this. And that way that our saving throws, in this particular case for the Turn Undead, will be dictated by our Wisdom modifier. So let's go ahead and add the effect. In this particular case, we want a heal effect, and it's going to be temporary hit points of 1d6 plus your clerical level. So I want to drag 1 die 6 into here, and then I want to look for the keyword cleric, or it should be CLE in this particular case. And what that will do is that as your character levels, this +2 bonus here will automatically increase. So when your character is level 20, it'll be 1d6 plus 20 hit points, or temporary hit points. So how would this work? Well, it's not overly complicated. As long as the ape or the wolf here ends their turn within the sphere that you have created, all you would have to do is set up and grant them temporary hit points. Now, I will point out one thing. You may have noticed that these didn't change. That's because these two creatures already have temporary hit points that are higher than the values that were rolled. That is a limitation of how temporary hit points work. It will always take the highest value, be it what's currently in place or what you roll. Whatever's going to be the higher value will be what gets applied within Fantasy Grounds. And I suppose I could add that to myself, seeing as my character is inside of the sphere. Obviously, it's centered on them. And that is how that particular works. There's no limit to how many creatures you can add this to from what I can read through this description, as well as from what I can interpret. If someone has a different opinion on that, don't hesitate to let me know. But that sets up our Channel Divinity feature. We will gain additional uses later on, but for now, we are only limited to one feature. Or one use, I should say. What this means is that because this feature is tied to our Channel Divinity feature, up until level 6, we will only get one use. At level 6, we will finally gain our second use, and that will remain so until we hit level 18, where we will gain our third use. But once you've burnt through a use, your character is going to have to complete a short or a long rest in order to be able to regain any of those uses. So that is the only limitation when it comes to Channel Divinity. At level 6, your character is going to acquire the Steps of the Night feature, which gives your character the ability to fly around as long as there is an area of dim light or darkness. It will allow your character to travel whatever their movement speed is for a total of 60 seconds or 1 minute, or 10 rounds if you're in combat. This is also used as a bonus action, so you do not need to expend a full action in order to do this. But the number of times that you can use this feature before you will need a long rest to regain any expended uses is equal to your character's proficiency bonus. So let's go ahead and add this to our Actions tab. So I'm going to drop it into place. I am going to copy Twilight Domain here. Move that down, and then I'm going to set up 2 daily uses. Actually, at level 6, we should be 3. So this will be 3 daily uses for Steps of Night. and it will give you the flying capability. So that is essentially just indicated in the map when you go about flying back and forth. However, we are not quite done setting up things we have to deal with at level 6. We also need to ensure that our channel divinity use has been increased to 2 uses daily. And that will ensure that we can go through and have 2 pips here and be able to expend 1 use each. I'm going to go back and untick those so that I have those for our later example. At level 8, your character will gain access to the Divine Strike of the Twilight Domain feature that allows your character to add extra radiant damage when using melee or ranged weapons. The total is an extra of 1d8 points of radiant damage on top of your normal weapons damage initially, but when your character reaches level 14, this will increase to 2d8 points of radiant damage. This can be used once per turn, but can be used essentially every single turn if you so wish. So let's go ahead and drop this into our Actions tab, and I'm going to quickly copy the Twilight Domain thing so that when I get it to the top there, I can just paste it. Paste that into place, and the effect is already into place. How this will work, however, is relatively straightforward. As long as our character has the act of doing something, and it could be done during a reaction as well, then what will happen is let's say that I attack the succubus with my Warhammer here. So I'm going to go ahead and roll my attack roll. That's a 20, so that's going to be a critical hit. Before I roll my damage, I want to go ahead and ensure that the radiant damage effect is in place and ready to go. Now I can roll my damage, and you will see it will do double the damage. Nice. I love that. And that's exactly how that is going to work. There'll be double damage for both the damage of the hammer as well as the damage from the radiant damage. So you should see a couple of radiants and a couple of bludgeoning here. Yep. So there's type radiant damage here for 1 die roll. There's 2 bludgeoning and another radiant here, which is the critical roll. At level 14, we're going to want to ensure that we adjust the total radiant damage that is being done to 2d8 points of damage. And that's all we have to do. So if I apply that effect to our character again and roll the damage, we can see that we now have 3 dice being rolled. Although in this case, I think I have finally killed the succubus. In any event, we can see that the Warhammer die is this black dice here, but the radiant damage that was done, or rolled rather, are these 2 purple die. Now the final feature that your character is going to gain is called a Twilight Shroud, and you get this when your character turns level 17. This feature enhances your Twilight Sanctuary feature by granting half cover to your character and anyone who is allied with your character and is in this sphere. Now you might think that setting this up is actually going to be a little bit tricky, but that is actually not the case. All we have to do is add it to our Actions tab. I'm going to quickly copy this and move that into our grouping here. I'm going to add a new effect to it, and I'm going to copy this so I don't have to type this and modify this effect. Now what I want to do is simply add the keyword cover. And I believe this lasts for 1 minute because I think, where is it here? No, that's the Eyes of the Night. Twilight Sanctuary. Is that the one? Yes. So it lasts for 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, good. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to give myself Twilight Shroud. In fact, apparently I already left it there from my previous test just to confirm that everything worked the way that I wanted it to. Regardless, it's there. Now when I make an attack roll with one of the creatures as a DM, you will see that it has this defense effects +2 bonus that is being applied to the total hit points that total armor class that my cleric has, making this a miss. So our cleric has an AC of 20. 17 is a hit, so 22 would be a hit in this particular case. If I remove the effect, you'll see that this armor class stays at 20. So this is our character's raw armor class. That means that it's 20 plus 2 in this particular case, making 22 a hit, which would make sense. Excellent. That means this is working exactly the way that we need it to. So you can now apply this to anybody who's in that area and drop that cover effect and have them or give them a +2 bonus to their armor class. And the last thing that we need to deal with is ensuring that our Channel Divinity feature gains its third use. And again, you don't modify it with this. You have to modify it with the group itself because they're a linked usage. And we can see that here. And that completes everything that we need to deal with when it comes to our cleric. The characters of the Twilight Domain seems to be the kind of character who is typically used for providing defensive protections and controlling the overall impacts of effects on allies of that particular character. It can be quite useful under the right circumstances, but this class still provides all the normal clerical features on top of the class specialization, making this a very competent class to play. However, this does bring us to the end of this particular video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.